Hello and welcome to another Warhammer 40,000 Battle Report brought to you by the Legion Wargaming. And today, on this verdant world, the Grey Knights, the psychic guardians of the Adeptus Astartes, have discovered a huge network of catacombs filled with countless Eldar spirit stones. But as they prepare to extract the precious psychic crystals for containment and further study, they are unaware that they are being watched. Rangers of Craftworlds Alaitoc have quickly sent word to their own people, who have in turn called upon the descendants of the spirits contained in the stones. The stones form part of a matrix set in place for 1,000 years to watch over a terrible psychic threat, and the Eldar of Craftworlds Iyanden will not allow the humans to trespass and undo the work of their forefathers. They have joined the Eldar of Alaitoc to protect the psychic matrix. The battle today is 1,850 points. It is Grey Knights versus Eldar Craftworlds. The mission is the Emperor's Will, with hammer and anvil deployment, and the objectives have already been placed, with one being placed on this hastily constructed landing facility that will allow the Imperial forces to explore the catacombs, and the other is at the entrance to the catacombs themselves. This is going to be a battle of psychic might. Who will emerge on top? We shall see. Let's take a look at the armies. This 1,850 point Grey Knights army is a single Nemesis Strike Force detachment led by a level 3 librarian. He is in Terminator armour and has a force stave, and as a second HQ choice it is Castellan Garin Crow, champion of the Order of Purifiers. This detachment has 3 troop choices, the first of which are 2 squads of Terminators. They are both what you see is what you get. So the first has 3 pairs of Falchions and an Incinerator, and the second has 3 Nemesis Force Halberds, 1 stave and a Psi Cannon. And the final troops choice is a strike squad of 6 Grey Knights. They all have Nemesis Force Halberds. For elites, the first 2 slots are filled by Dreadnoughts. One has an assault cannon and a missile launcher, and the second has an assault cannon and a power fist with an underslung storm bolter. The final elite's choice is a squad of 7 Purifiers. For fast attack, we have a squad of 7 Interceptors. Once again, it is what you see is what you get. So we have 2 Demon Hammers, 3 Force Halberds, a stave and an Incinerator. And the second fast attack choice is a Storm Raven gunship, twin-linked assault cannons and twin-linked heavy bolters. And final unit in this force is a heavy support choice. It is a Purgation squad with 4 Incinerators. The Grey Knights, as usual, have brought along a lot of psychic might. Will it be enough to overcome the Eldar? Let's see what the Eldar have brought along. This 1,850 point Eldar list is Battleforged and consists of a Seer Council formation, a single combined arms detachment and an aspect host formation, and this force represents the combined might of Craftworlds, Alaitoc and Iyanden. They have combined, and that is evident in their Seer Council. We have the Farseer of Alaitoc, he has a singing spear, and the Farseer of Iyanden. They have brought with them another 6 Warlocks, mixed between the 2 Craftworlds, and 2 of those Warlocks have singing spears. The combined arms attachment is led by another Psyker. It is the Iyanden Spirit Seer. He has been given command, but his detachment contains a mix of the forces of the Craftworlds. For troops, he has a squad of 12 Iyanden Guardians and a squad of 12 Alaitoc Guardians. And there is another Alaitoc troop choice. It is a squad of 6 Rangers. For elites, the Walking Dead have arrived. We have 2 squads, each of 5 Wraithguard, and for heavy support we have the Iyanden Wraithlord. He has an Eldar missile launcher, a Bright Lance and Flamers, and in another heavy support slot, Craftworlds Alaitoc has also brought along their own Wraithlord. He has a shuriken cannon, an Eldar missile launcher and a glaive. As well as the forces of these Craftworlds, they have also called upon the aid of the aspect shrines, and one aspect host has answered the call, consisting of a squad of 3 shining spears led by an exarch with a star lance, a squad of 8 swooping hawks led by an exarch, and a squad of 5 dark reapers led by an exarch, and they all have star shot missiles. This formation will have ballistic skill 5. This army is very, very powerful psychically. It has 14 warp charge dice, which happens to be exactly the same as the Grey Knights. This is going to be a very interesting contest. Moving into deployment. And the armies have deployed with the Grey Knights ground forces led by Castellan Crow. He has joined a squad of purifiers and they are moving through this hastily constructed base there in good cover at the foot of the landing pad. Meanwhile, on the landing pad itself and on this piece of defended high ground, the Grey Knights have 2 very watchful sentinels in the form of both of their dreadnoughts. They have excellent fields of fire over this open ground from there. The only other Grey Knights currently deployed are the interceptors. They are on this piece of raised ground behind the barricades and they are looking to leap forward. But the Grey Knights, they are waiting patiently for the brother librarian to lead the rest of their brothers into this battle. In reserve, the Grey Knights have the brother librarian, 2 squads of terminators, the strike squad and the storm raven carrying the purgation squad, this being a nemesis strike force. Those elements that deployed by deep strike will be rolling to arrive from reserve on turn 1. Meanwhile, the Eldar have arrived through their webway gates and they are wasting no time in launching an assault against this Imperial facility led by the towering forms of their Wraith Lords. Both the Iyanden Wraith Lord and the Alaitoc Wraith Lord are moving down from these rocks to stomp across this open ground and tear the Imperial base to pieces. They are supported by both squads of Wraith Guard, one of which is led by the Iyanden Spirit Seer. And following up in the wake of their mighty constructs, the Iyanden Guardians are hoping to secure the remnants of the landing pad once the living dead have torn into it. The Shining Spears are also deployed over on the far right flank. They are looking to cover the ground as quickly as possible and dive in to the Grey Knights. Meanwhile, at the entrance to the catacombs, which is the objective on this side of the table, the Seer Council themselves have deployed. They are following behind a large squad of Alaitoc Guardians and they have the supporting fire from the high ground of the dreaded Dark Reapers. Meanwhile, the Alaitoc Rangers, they are guarding the very entrance to the catacombs themselves. They are looking to give fire with their sniper rifles from there. So it looks like the Eldar have a strong base to hold the entrance to the catacombs and an extremely formidable assault force to destroy the Imperial interlopers. In reserve, the Eldar have the swooping hawks. They are looking to deep strike. As the Grey Knights deployed first, unless the Eldar can seize initiative, we go into Grey Knights turn 1. And the Eldar are obviously filled with a vengeful fury that the Grey Knights would dare to trespass in their catacombs containing the spirits of their ancestors. With the roll of a 6, the vengeful Eldar have seized the initiative. The Grey Knights will find themselves under attack immediately going into Eldar turn 1. End of Eldar movement phase turn 1, and although the Eldar surprised the Grey Knights by seizing the initiative, it seems that the attack of their Wraith constructs is not moving as quickly over this broken ground as the Farseers would like. But everything has moved forward. The Iyanden Wraith Lord has stomped down, the Alaitoc Wraith Lord following up very slowly through the rocks behind, and the Wraith Guard are also having a hard time scaling these rock faces. The The Iyanden Guardians are still moving up in support. It is only the Shining Spears over on the extreme right flank that have no problem in moving their full distance over this difficult terrain. Meanwhile, the rest of the Eldar, they have held position. They know that there are a lot of Grey Knights still lurking in reserve, ready to teleport, so they are consolidating on this objective. The Farseers are ordering the Rangers and the Dark Reapers to give fire on the Interceptors, who are the only threat on the battlefield to the entrance to the catacombs at this point in time. That brings Eldar movement phase turn 1 to a close. The Eldar are expecting a very strong performance, while they have psychic superiority in Eldar psychic phase turn 1. End of Eldar psychic phase turn 1, and with 19 warp charge dice to the Grey Knights 12, the Eldar have begun to probe the Grey Knights psychic defences, but it started off very disappointingly for the Eldar as the Iyanden Spirit Seer attempted to put invisibility onto the Shining Spears. He was successful with 2 charges, but the Grey Knights used 8 of their warp charges to successfully deny it, and then the Spirit Seer was once again left disappointed as he failed to harness the energy to put shrouding onto the Shining Spears. So the Shining Spears have not been augmented at all. Meanwhile, the Alaitoc Farseer then successfully put guide onto the Dark Reapers with 1 warp charge, but the Grey Knights used their last 4 warp charges to successfully deny it again. They have been very effective with their psychic defence so far, but that did leave them with no more warp charges to deny the rest of the powers unleashed by the Seer Council. The Seer Council have managed to put Fortune and Conceal and Will of Asuryan on themselves. Will of Asuryan is a power that doesn't see a lot of use, but in this case it gives all Eldar units within 12 inches Fearless and Adamantium Will, which could prove very effective against the Grey Knights. The Eldar, they are disappointed that the Grey Knights stopped a couple of their powers, but the psychic conflict in this battle is just beginning. Let's see how the Eldar get on going into Eldar shooting phase turn 1. End of Eldar shooting phase turn 1, and the Rangers were unsuccessful in their attempts to target the Interceptors. They caused no damage, but 2 Interceptors were cut down by a volley at long range from the deadly Dark Reapers. Meanwhile, on the Eldar right flank, the Wraith Guard, the Spirit Seer and the Guardians have all tried to run forwards through this broken rocky ground, but once again they have not gone very far, and the 2 towering Wraith Lords have stood firm and opened fire with their heavy weapons. It was looking very disappointing as the Alaitoc Wraith Lord targeted a Dreadnought, did no damage, and the missile launcher from the Iyanden Wraith Lord also did no damage, but in the last shot of the phase, the Bright Lance from this Wraith Lord hit one of the Grey Knight Dreadnoughts and has blown it to pieces. That is a good result for the Eldar, as it was looking like they were not going to achieve first blood until that shot. They have achieved it, and that is a point that is now out of the reach of the Grey Knights. But with just 1 Dreadnought and 2 Grey Knights as casualties, that was quite a disappointing opening shooting phase from the Eldar. Let's see what the Shining Spears do in Eldar Assault phase turn 1. End of Eldar Assault phase turn 1, and the Shining Spears have decided to hold position. They are happy that if any Grey Knights venture forward from this complex, they will be able to charge them. That brings Eldar turn 1 to a close. They have achieved first blood, which they are pleased about, but their attack on this flank is struggling to cover the distance to their objective, and the Grey Knights did quite well in resisting their opening salvo of psychic powers. So both sides are relatively happy with their performance during the Eldar's first turn. Let's see what happens, and vitally, how many Grey Knights arrive in Grey Knights turn 1. Start of Grey Knights turn 1, and the Eldar are relieved as only the Librarian and 1 squad of Terminators to which he is attached have arrived. They have deployed by deep strike very accurately, and they are looking to commence the assault upon the entrance to the catacombs, but the Eldar are relieved that the other squad of Terminators and the Grey Knight Strike Squad have not yet arrived. Let's see if the arrival of the Brother Librarian at least proves critical going into Grey Knight's movement phase, turn 1. End of Grey Knight's movement phase, turn 1, and sensing the arrival of the Brother Librarian and his Terminators, the Interceptors have triggered their personal teleporters and leapt forwards. They have an incinerator and it is pointing right at the Alaitoc Guardians. This could be a tricky turn for the Eldar defending the entrance to the catacombs, as well as that incinerator. These Terminators also have an incinerator, and the Brother Librarian has both Cleansing Flame and Vortex of Doom. The Farseers are very glad they managed to successfully cast Will of Asuryan in their previous psychic phase. Meanwhile, in the Imperial landing pad installation, Castellan Crow has ordered his Purifiers to move forward and try to take out the Shining Spears through massed Stormbolter fire, and the one remaining Dreadnought has plenty of targets from his position on top of the landing pad. So the Grey Knights are responding. They had hoped for more of their reserves to arrive, but we shall now see how the Brother Librarian faces up to the might of the Seer Council in Grey Knight's Psychic Phase, turn 1. End of Grey Knight's Psychic Phase, turn 1, and the Brother Librarian opened the phase by using 8 of his 16 Warp Charge dice to successfully cast Cleansing Flame. He succeeded with 7 out of the 8 dice he rolled. That panicked the Seer Council into putting 12 of their dice into denying it, but they easily managed to, with the help of Will of Asuryan, and to add insult to injury, the Brother Librarian perilled and suffered a wound. He then attempted to summon up a Vortex of Doom on the Dark Reapers, but he was only successful with 2 Warp Charges and could only grit his teeth in frustration as, again, with the help of Adamantium Will granted by Will of Asuryan, the Dark Reapers managed to deny it. So the Eldar have psychic superiority. They have shut down all of the Grey Knight's psychic powers during their first turn. The Seer Council are a truly deadly opponent in the psychic phase. Let's see if Grey Knight shooting phase, turn 1, is more successful for the Sons of Titan. End of Grey Knight shooting phase, turn 1, and the Interceptors unleashed their incinerator over the Alaitoc Guardians, incinerating 5 of them, and another 3 were gunned down by the Grey Knight Stormbolters, but they are fearless thanks to Will of Asuryan. Realising that, under the effects of fortune, the Seer Council would have rerollable, invulnerable saves, the Brother Librarian ordered his Terminators to run and unleash their weaponry against the Dark Reapers. Their incinerator managed to take out 1 of the Aspect Warriors, and a volley of Stormbolter fire managed to wound the Exarch, but they are also fearless. Not that they would have had to take a morale check for only losing 1, but at least the Grey Knights have begun to cause some casualties amongst the Eldar guarding the catacomb entrance. Meanwhile, Castellan Crow ordered his Purifiers to open fire with their Stormbolters. They managed to take out 1 Shining Spear and wound the Exarch. The Exarch was then taken down by a burst of fire from the Dreadnought's assault cannon, and the last jet biking Aspect Warrior was taken out by a crack missile from the Dreadnought. So the Shining Spears have been wiped out. The Grey Knights, they are relatively happy with their performance in their first shooting phase. With no assaults, that also brings Grey Knight's turn 1 to a close, and they're disappointed that the Eldar shut down their psychic assault so easily, but they still have a lot more Grey Knights waiting in Deep Strike Reserve and in the Storm Raven. But the Eldar also have the Swooping Hawks in reserve. Let's see if they arrive going into Eldar turn 2. Start of Eldar turn 2, and disappointingly for them, with a roll of a 1, the Swooping Hawks have failed to arrive. Let's hope the Eldar have some better luck and their Wraithguard and Wraithlord assault can move a bit quicker through this cover in Eldar movement phase turn 2. End of Eldar movement phase turn 2, and it looks like the Wraith constructs have managed to make a lot more ground in this phase than in their previous phase. Both of the Wraith Guard squads are advancing along the Spirit Seer, and the Iyanden Wraith Lord with a 6-inch move is stomping towards this facility. Only the Alaitoc Wraith Lord seems to still be struggling to get through this terrain. The Iyanden Guardians are moving up in support and moving over to the right to replace the now deceased Shining Spears. Meanwhile, the Seer Council has some difficult decisions to make. It needs to drive all of these Grey Knights away from the objective. So the 4 remaining Alaitoc Guardians, they're going to open fire, having moved round towards the Interceptors, and the Rangers are going to try to take them out as well. They may be joined in their fire by the Dark Reapers. It depends how confident the Seer Council themselves are at taking on the Brother Librarian and his Terminators. As we go into Eldar Psychic Phase Turn 2, this could be very interesting, as the Brother Librarian, he's level 3, he has a Psychic Hood, he has a Nemesis Warding Stave, and he also has the Aegis. He can make this Psychic Phase very, very tricky for the Eldar Seer Council. Let's see Eldar Psychic Phase Turn 2. End of Eldar Psychic Phase Turn 2, and the Seer Council decided to test the mettle of the Astartes Psyker by attempting to put Doom on his squad. They succeeded with 4, and he decided to put all of his deny dice, all 11 into it just to be sure, and he managed to deny it, but that left the Grey Knights with no more protection, and that allowed the Seer Council to successfully put Guide on the Dark Reapers, and the Spirit Seer to successfully put invisibility on the lead squad of Wraithguard. But the Seer Council were not 100% successful, as they failed in their own attempt to put Fortune again on themselves. Despite needing 3s, they rolled terribly, so that was disappointing. But other than that, quite a good phase. They would have liked to get Doom on the Librarian and his Terminators, but it proved to be a very useful way of drawing out all of the Grey Knights dice right at the start of the phase. Let's see what the Eldar can do going into Eldar Craftworlds Shooting Phase Turn 2. End of Eldar Shooting Phase Turn 2, and after the Alaitoc Guardians and the Rangers both targeted the Interceptors to no effect at all, the Dark Reapers were compelled to add their fire. They were rewarded as they cut down all of the remaining Grey Knights. The Seer Council, they did no damage with their Singing Spears, but they did manage to take out 1 Terminator with a volley from their Shuriken pistols. But the Seer Council are in a difficult position. They failed to get off Fortune, so if they charge these Terminators, that is very risky. If they don't charge, the Terminators will be free to take out the Dark Reapers, and the Eldar know there are more Grey Knights to arrive by Deep Strike as well. That's a difficult choice for the Seers. What will they do? We will see. Meanwhile, over on the flank where all of the Wraith constructs are leading the attack, it was a disappointing performance from particularly the D weapons of the lead Wraithguard squad, who are invisible. They only managed to take out 1 Purifier with their volley. They were very inaccurate. Both shots from the Iyanden Wraith Lord rebounded harmlessly from the Dreadnought's frontal armour, but the Alaitoc Wraith Lord has managed to get 1 penetrating hit and stun the Grey Knights War Machine, so at least it will be firing snapshots next turn, but disappointing fire from a very deadly looking assault. Let's see what the Eldar decide to do going into Eldar Assault Phase Turn 2. End of Eldar Assault Phase Turn 2, and with the battle cries on their lips, the Seer Council have decided to charge into the Librarian and his Terminator bodyguard. As they charged in, the Incinerator turned 1 Warlock into a Screaming Torch, and a volley of Stormbolt fire cut down another. But then the Warlocks got in with their Witchblades and managed to cut down 1 Terminator, and the Farseers managed to take out another with their Witchblade and Singing Spear. In return, the 2 remaining Grey Knights with their Falchions could do no damage, but the Brother Librarian managed to smash a Warlock to pieces with his stave. The Grey Knights lost the combat by 1, but they are locked, and that is a relief to the Eldar. The Dark Reapers have been saved by the bravery of the Seer Council, and the Seer Council also now have rendered the Grey Knights Librarian unable to cast his deadly Witchfire powers. So that brings Eldar Turn 2 to a close, and this battle is still anyone's to win. Let's see if more Grey Knights arrive going into Grey Knights turn 2. Start of Grey Knights turn 2, and the Knights of Titan have been reinforced as 2 more of the units of their Nemesis Strike Force have arrived. The other squad of Terminators has deep struck very accurately. They are going to be giving fire against the Dark Reapers. The Grey Knights want the deadly long-range Eldar Aspect Warriors to go down this turn, and then the Terminator should be in a good position to clear the rest of the Eldar and seize the entrance to the catacombs. At least that's the plan. Meanwhile, the Strike Squad has arrived, scattering back from their initial coordinates to materialise by the gantry building. They are reinforcing Castellan Crow, who is wondering how to drive back all of these Wraith constructs that are advancing on the facility. Meanwhile, the Storm Raven containing the Purgation Squad is yet to arrive. Let's see what the Grey Knights can do going into Grey Knights movement phase turn 2. End of Grey Knight's movement phase turn 2, and as the Librarian and his squad are locked in combat, these Terminators arrived from Deep Strike. This Dreadnought is stunned, and these Grey Knights arrived from Deep Strike. It fell to Castellan Crow as the only Grey Knight unit that was able to move to come up with a plan, and he has ordered his purifiers forward. They have spilled from this rocky defile, and they are preparing first to unleash a cleansing flame, and then perhaps to launch their own assault into the face of the Eldar attack. We shall see going into Grey Knight Psychic Phase turn 2. End of Grey Knight's Psychic Phase turn 2, and it looks like the newly arrived Grey Knights are putting the Eldar Psykers under a lot of pressure. Combined with 3 Warlocks going down last turn, both sides had 17 Warp Charge dice, and the Grey Knights made very good use of them. First, Castellan Crow and his purifiers, they have put Hammer Hand on themselves. They may well be looking to charge the Wraith Guard. Even though they're invisible, they still feel they may be able to take them on. Then the Brother Librarian and his Terminators put a lot of dice into getting Hammer Hand on themselves. The Seer Council desperately tried to deny it, but despite rolling 8 deny dice, they failed to get the 2 6s they needed. So the Librarian and his Terminators have Hammer Hand, and that is very worrying for the Seers now. And even worse, the Eldar failed to deny a successful cleansing flame summoned up by the purifiers, which went on to take out 7 of the Iyanden Guardians and 1 Wraith Guard, although the towering form of the Wraith Lord was unharmed by the flames. At least from the Eldar's perspective, the Iyanden Guardians, 5 remaining, have held morale. But that was a good phase for the Grey Knights. They really have demonstrated that they are very dangerous in the Psychic Phase. Let's see how they get on in their second shooting phase. Grey Knight Shooting Phase turn 2. End of Grey Knight Shooting Phase turn 2, and the Dreadnought that was stunned opened fire with its weaponry on the second squad of Wraith Guard, unsurprisingly doing no damage. The newly arrived Strike Squad have run forwards towards the landing pad but have failed to bring their Storm Bolters into line of sight of any targets, and Castellan Crow has ordered his men to hold their fire. He does not want to make his charge any harder. He's got Hammer Hand and he wants to charge the first squad of Wraith Guard. As the Librarian is locked in assault, the only other shooting came from the newly arrived Terminators, and they have achieved an excellent result for the Grey Knights. The Storm Bolters cut down 1 Dark Reaper and the Psy Cannon cut down a second, leaving just 1 Aspect Warrior and the Exarch, despite having Leadership 9, which they could re-roll because they're in an Aspect host. The Aspect Warriors decided to retreat from the battlefield. They have fled from the table. The Grey Knights are very happy about that. They haven't got a lot of firing, but that has more than made up for it. Let's see what happens in a very crucial phase. Grey Knights Assault Phase turn 2. End of Grey Knights Assault Phase turn 2, and as they begun their charge, the Purifiers came under fire from the Wraith Guard. The lead Grey Knight was blown to pieces by a Wraith Cannon shot, and that meant that the rest of the Purifiers just failed their charge. So that was disappointing for the Grey Knights. Meanwhile, the combat between the Seer Council and the Brother Librarian and his Terminators continues. The Farseers and the Warlocks cut down another Terminator, and in return the Grey Knights have killed another Warlock. The combat was drawn, 1 wound each. They remain locked, but it looks like the Eldar may be wearing the Grey Knights down. That brings Grey Knights turn 2 to a close, and neither side has managed to gain any advantage in this conflict yet. But as the Eldar Wraith Host's assault nears their objective, that could change going into Eldar Craftworlds turn 3. Start of Eldar Craftworlds turn 3, and the Swooping Hawks have arrived, deep striking with their customary accuracy into the temporary Imperial facility. They tried to target the strike squad with their grenade pack, but it was very, very inaccurate and hit nothing. But they are preparing their las blasters to cut down as many Grey Knights as they can in support of the attack of the Wraiths to the front. Let's see what the Eldar do with the rest of their forces. Eldar Craftworlds movement phase turn 3. End of Eldar movement phase turn 3, and it looks like the Wraith constructs are about to inflict a crippling blow on the Grey Knights holding this landing pad. Both squads of Wraithguard have advanced along with the Spirit Seer, and both Wraith Lords have also moved forward 6 inches. Things are looking grim for the Grey Knights as they are surrounded, thanks to the newly arrived Swooping Hawks as well. Meanwhile, the few remaining Iyanden Guardians that suffered so badly from Cleansing Flame, they are also moving up in support. But at the other objective, it's a different story. It is the Eldar that are under huge pressure. The 4 remaining Alaitoc Guardians are moving to try to take out some Terminators, and the Rangers are going to add their fire as well. But with the Seer Council locked in assault, it looks like the Grey Knights have the advantage at the entrance to the catacombs, and we still do not know who will triumph in the assault between the Farseers and the Grey Knights Librarian. Let's see if the Eldar can do anything in the psychic phase to help their cause. Eldar Psychic Phase turn 3. End of Eldar Psychic Phase turn 3, and thanks to the death of several Warlocks and the arrival of several more Grey Knights, the Eldar started this phase with 14 warp charges. The Grey Knights had 15. They have pulled ahead in the total amount of warp charges. The Eldar started off by having their Spirit Seer successfully put invisibility on the Wraithguard squad to which he is attached, and then the Seer Council successfully put Guide onto the Rangers. They're hoping for some rending hits to take out these Terminators, but the wily Brother Librarian saved all his dice for what he knew was coming, which was the Seer Council putting fortune on themselves, even though they succeeded with 5 successful warp charges. He, with his Psychic Hood and his Force Stave and the Aegis, managed with a cry of triumph to deny it. So that's a good result for the Grey Knights, although maybe the Seer Council will be able to take them out before needing fortune. We shall see. Let's see what the Eldar do in Eldar Shooting Phase turn 3. End of Eldar Shooting Phase turn 3, and the phase opened disappointingly for the Eldar, as despite both squads of Wraithguard targeting the Purifiers, only 2 of the Grey Knights went down. The Grey Knights made some great cover saves combined with some very poor to hit rolls from the Wraithguard. The 2 Wraith Lords combined their fire to inflict 2 glancing hits that took out the Grey Knight's second Dreadnought, but more disappointment from the Swooping Hawks, as although they managed an impressive 19 hits, only 1 member of the newly arrived strike squad fell. Grey Knights are Space Marines, and Space Marines are very hard to take out with las blaster fire. Meanwhile, over on the far side of the battlefield, the Rangers benefited from Guide as they got 6 hits but only managed to take out 1 Terminator, and the Alaitoc Guardians unleashed their Shuriken catapults but did no damage to the hulking Imperial Warriors. They have battle focused away. They are considering playing a cat and mouse game with the Terminators, as all of these units clustered around this objective have objective secured. So a relatively disappointing phase for the Eldar. They have done some damage but not as much as they would have hoped for. Let's see who emerges triumphant if indeed this assault does round up this turn. Eldar, assault phase turn 3. End of Eldar, assault phase turn 3, and the combat between the Seer Council and the Brother Librarian and his last remaining Terminator continues. Both sides appear to have the measure of the other, and not a single wound was inflicted. They remain locked. It's hard to pick a winner in this assault at the moment. That brings Eldar turn 3 to a close. They were quite disappointed. They thought the attack of their Wraith Guard would have inflicted a lot more damage. Although both Dreadnoughts are down and a few Purifiers, Castellan Crow is still standing there, and they would have liked to have taken out more of the strike squad. It has been compounded by the fact that the Swooping Hawks rolled a double 1. For their battle focus move, they have stranded themselves in a very vulnerable position, which we forgot to mention in the shooting phase. The Grey Knights are desperately hoping that their Storm Raven and their Purgation squad carried inside it arrive, going into Grey Knights turn 3. Start of Grey Knights turn 3, and the Grey Knights are relieved that their Storm Raven containing the Purgation squad has arrived from reserve. It has moved at high speed 36 inches all the way to the centre point of the table, and it is planning to gun down these Guardians and of course the Purgation squad inside. They have 4 incinerators that could spell doom for the Rangers, currently holding the entrance to the Catacombs objective. Let's see what the rest of the Grey Knights do in Grey Knights movement phase turn 3. End of Grey Knights movement phase turn 3, and Castellan Crow has ordered his last 3 Purifiers to move forward and to desperately hold back the wall of Eldar Wraiths with a wall of flame. Let's see if they can do that. Meanwhile, he himself has left the Purifiers and joined the strike squad, and they are going to try to deal with the Swooping Hawks. Looks like he is going to try a cleansing flame. He has moved away from the Purifiers so that the Grey Knights can potentially get 2 cleansing flames over this side of the battlefield. We shall see. Meanwhile, seeing the Storm Raven carrying the Purgation squad approaching, these Terminators have decided to leave, taking the objective to their newly arrived brothers while they move to the aid of their Brother Librarian, who is their Warlord. If they can charge in, swing this combat, then they may get slay the Warlord while saving their own. That could be critical. We shall see. The Grey Knights are hoping for a good psychic phase, particularly over this side of the battlefield. Let's see how they do. Grey Knight psychic phase turn 3. End of Grey Knight psychic phase turn 3, and the Eldar psychic defences are still formidable. Castellan Crow tried to get off a cleansing flame on the Swooping Hawks, but the Eldar denied it with 4 6s. Meanwhile, the Purifiers followed his orders. They cast cleansing flame. They used 6 dice, they got 5 successes, so the Spirit Seer decided that it was too powerful. He would save the denied dice for other powers. Only 2 Wraith Guard went down to the power. This squad only has 2 left. The power could not hurt the Wraith Lord or the other squad of Wraith Guard. Meanwhile, the Seer Council are still proving to be very tricky to deal with in the psychic phase. The approaching Terminators, they had their Hammer Hand denied and they failed to cast Force on 1 dice, but once again the Librarian and his last Terminator have got Hammer Hand. The Eldar are just hoping they can hack down the last of the Falchion wielding Terminators before he can get any benefit from it. We shall see. But first, we shall see what the Grey Knights can do in Grey Knight shooting phase turn 3. End of Grey Knight shooting phase turn 3, and annoyed that his attempt to cast Cleansing Flame was denied, Castellan Crow and the strike squad unleashed a pummeling volley of bolter fire into the Swooping Hawks, taking out 3 of them and the Exarch, but the 4 remaining Hawks have held morale and the Grey Knights are considering a charge against them. More effective firing came from the last 3 Purifiers. With a volley from their Storm Bolters, they took out another Wraith Guard. There is only 1 left in this squad, but unfortunately for the Grey Knights, they don't seem to have much here to stop the other squad, the Spirit Seer and the 2 Wraith Lords, advancing on this objective. The Storm Raven was disappointed that its firepower only took out 2 Alaitoc Guardians, but The pilot looked on in satisfaction as the last two failed their morale check and have begun to fall back. They're less than 25%. They will need Snake Eyes to rally. And this squad of Terminators has not fired as they prepare to wade into this assault in Grey Knight's assault phase turn 3. End of Grey Knight's assault phase turn 3, and it has been a good one for the Sons of Titan. Castellan Crow led the strike squad in a charge against the Swooping Hawks. They took no damage, and with their nemesis Force Halberds easily butchered the remaining Eldar Aspect Warriors, punishing them for their audacity in deep striking right into their Imperial installation. Meanwhile, in the Battle of the Warlords over this side of the battlefield, neither the Brother Librarian nor the Farseers and their Warlocks could do any damage to each other, but it was the new squad of Terminators that charged into the fray that has made the difference. They have cut down both remaining Warlocks, and it is just the Farseers of Iyanden and Alaitoc left, surrounded by Grey Knight's Terminators. The Farseers lost the combat, but they have passed morale. They remain locked, but things are looking grim for them. A good phase for the Grey Knights, but with the Eldar attack closing in on the objective this side, this game could still go either way. Let's see what the Eldar can do going into Eldar Craftworlds turn 4. End of Eldar movement phase turn 4, and the Wraith host has entered the Imperial landing complex led by the Iyanden Wraith Lord. He is supported by the Alaitoc Wraith Lord. These two Wraith constructs considered using their Eldar missile launchers to attempt some shots against the Storm Raven, but with two Skyfire missiles they're very unlikely to take it down, so they are going to content themselves with targeting Crow and the strike squad. Meanwhile, the Wraith Guard, they are advancing along with the few Iyanden Guardians, and they are ordered to eliminate the last 3 Purifiers with a hail of fire before moving and securing the objective. The Eldar are hoping they have enough firepower here to take out the Purifiers and eventually Crow and the strike squad as well. Meanwhile, the Eldar do not really know what to do to defend their catacombs. The Alaitoc Guardians have failed to rally. They continue to fall back. Meanwhile, the Pathfinders, they just see the formidable form of the Storm Raven approaching. They can't hurt it with their sniper rifles, so they have pulled back. They're still holding the objective, but they are just trying to make themselves harder targets. And of course, the two Farseers remain locked, and things are looking grim for them. But they can still contribute in a big way to the Psychic phase as we go into Eldar Psychic phase turn 4. End of Eldar Psychic phase turn 4, and they had 13 dice to the Grey Knight 16. The Spirit Seer opened the phase by successfully casting Psychic Shriek onto the Purifiers. They tried to deny it but failed, but Grey Knight's Purifiers have highly disciplined minds of steel, and they resisted the shriek. Not a single Grey Knight fell, and the Seer Council in desperation threw all the rest of their dice into Fortune, which they have successfully got off with 8 successful walk charges. The Brother Librarian attempted to deny it, and he did very well, but he still only managed 7. So the power has gone off, and that could prove to be vital in saving the lives of the two Farseers. We shall see. Let's see what else the Eldar can do in Eldar Shooting Phase Turn 4. End of Eldar Shooting Phase Turn 4, and the Purifiers looked like they would survive when not a single one of them fell to the fire of the lone Wraith Guard or the Iyanden Guardians, but the Spirit Seer then directed his squad of 5 to turn their Wraith Cannon on the Grey Knights, and the fabric of reality was torn. All 3 remaining Purifiers were ripped to pieces by the colossal forces unleashed. But the 2 Wraith Lords were disappointed in their firing, as they only managed to take out the Justicar, leading the strike squad forward while Castellan Crow brings up the rear. But only 1 Grey Knight falling to these 2 colossal Wraith constructs was disappointing. Meanwhile, over the far side of the battlefield, neither the Rangers nor the fleeing Guardians can do anything against the approaching Storm Raven. So the Eldar looks like they are on the verge of taking the Imperial facility, but it is hard to see how on earth they are going to keep hold of their own objective. And we shall see which warlord emerges triumphant soon, surely. Going into Eldar Assault Phase Turn 4. End of Eldar Assault Phase Turn 4, and the Farseers could not penetrate the mighty tactical dreadnought plate of the Grey Knights with their attacks, and the Iyanden Farseer watched with great sadness as the Brother Librarian hefted his force stave and smashed down the Farseer of Alaitoc. But the Farseer of Iyanden, who is this army's warlord, he is unharmed thanks to fortune as the rest of the Grey Knights laid into him. But he is still unharmed and he has passed morale. He is holding up all these Grey Knights, but it looks like his days are numbered and the Grey Knights will take great pleasure in taking him down. And that brings Eldar Turn 4 to a close. Let's see what the Grey Knights can do going into Grey Knights Turn 4. End of Grey Knights movement phase, turn 4, and Castellan Crow and the strike squad have very little option left. They need to try to drive back all of these Eldar wraiths that are advancing towards this objective. They are moving forward. They may well try to give themselves force and try to take on the Iyanden Wraith Lord. We shall see. Meanwhile, the Storm Raven has dropped into hover mode. It's moved forward and the Purgation Squad have disembarked. They are still going after their original objective, which is the entrance to the catacombs. So they will be advancing with their incinerators, and they're hoping that is enough to drive away the Eldar Rangers. Meanwhile, the rest of the Grey Knights are still tied in combat with the Eldar Farseer of Iyanden. Surely this is his last turn. We shall see. Let's see what the Grey Knights can do. They should have a good psychic phase now they have taken out so many Eldar Psykers. Grey Knights psychic phase turn 4. End of Grey Knights psychic phase turn 4, and with 12 dice to the Eldar's 8, the Grey Knights started their psychic assault. Castellan Crow ordered his squad to put Hammer Hand on themselves, which they did successfully, and then they followed it up with Force, but the Eldar put all 8 of their dice into denying it, which they managed to do with 4 successes. So if they'd have had Force and Hammer Hand and managed to charge Iyanden Wraith Lord, that could have been devastating, but without Force we are just not sure. But that did leave the Eldar no more dice to deny Hammer Hand, which both squads of Terminators, one of which contains the Brother Librarian, managed to get off. So it's instant death for the Farseer. He still has Fortune on, but there's a lot of attacks coming his way. Let's see what happens first in Grey Knight shooting phase, turn 4. End of Grey Knight shooting phase, turn 4, and the Purgation Squad washed their incinerators over the 2 fleeing Guardians and reduced them to ashes as they prepare next turn to advance onto the objective. Meanwhile, the Storm Raven had a dreadful round of firing, targeting all its weapons into the Spirit Seer and the Wraith Guard, but did no damage at all. Meanwhile, Crow and his squad of Grey Knights cannot hurt the Iyanden Wraith Lord with their Storm Bolters as they prepare to charge, so they have not fired, and of course all the Terminators are locked in combat and determined to take out the Farseer of Iyanden in Grey Knights Assault Phase Turn 4. End of Grey Knights Assault Phase Turn 4, and as Crow and the Strike Squad began their charge, the Iyanden Wraith Lord lifted his fist and unleashed 2 sheets of flame, which took out the first Grey Knight, and that was enough to make the Castellan and the 3 remaining Grey Knights in this facility fail their charge. But much better news for the Grey Knights at the other end of the battlefield. The Farseer of Iyanden, the Eldar Warlord, has gone down. He made lots of saves, especially re-rolling his invulnerable with Fortune, but in the end there were just so many attacks of strength 6 or more, thanks to Hammer Hand coming in at him, that he was hacked down, and the Grey Knights are very happy about that. It's a point for Slay the Warlord, so that has counteracted first blood that the Eldar managed to get. This battle is another incredibly close one. It's hard to pick a winner still. Going into Eldar Craftworlds, turn 5. End of Eldar movement phase, turn 5, and hearing the psychic death scream of the Iyanden Farseer, the Spirit Seer, has no choice. He has ordered the two towering Wraith Lords to turn back and turn their heavy weaponry on all of the Grey Knights that are approaching the entrance to the catacombs. Meanwhile, the Rangers find themselves surrounded. They are praying for a good volley with their sniper rifles, and the Spirit Seer continues to lead his Wraith Guard and the remaining Iyanden Guardians across this landing pad. He is hoping that there is enough firepower here to take out Crow and the few remaining Grey Knights, but if the Eldar take this objective, it is looking very unlikely that they will be able to stop the Grey Knights taking this one. This is a very close game. Let's see what the Spirit Seer alone can now do in Eldar Psychic Phase, turn 5. End of Eldar Psychic Phase, turn 5, and with a primal surge of rage, the Spirit Seer put all 8 of his dice into Psychic Scream, and despite having 15 dice to deny it, and the Aegis and being Psychers, Crow failed to stop the power, and 2 of his strike squad have collapsed with blood streaming from their helmets. That is a good result from the Spirit Seer. Let's see if the Eldar can capitalise on that and finally clear the Grey Knights out of this facility in Eldar Shooting Phase, turn 5. End of Eldar Shooting Phase, turn 5, and the Wraith Guard open fire on Crow and his surviving Grey Knight of the strike team. The Grey Knight was blown to pieces, but Crow was saved twice by his invulnerable save. Meanwhile, this Wraith Guard has stomped forward to hold the objective in case the game ends, and the Iyanden Guardians ran up through this defile, opened fire on Crow with their shuriken catapults, but caused no damage. The 2 Wraith Lords that have turned to move back towards the Eldar's home objective opened fire with their heavy weaponry and took out 2 members of the Purgation Squad, but the remaining 3 Grey Knights are standing firm. But in an unbelievable result, the Rangers open fire on the 4 Terminators advancing upon them over this rocky outcrop. They got 4 wounds, 2 of which were rending. 2 Terminators went down to the rending shots, and then the normal wounds. The saves came up as snake eyes. So 6 Rangers have, with a single volley, gunned down 4 Grey Knights Terminators. That is the sort of thing that swings games, although we're not sure it will in this, as the Librarian and his last Terminator here and the Purgation Squad, that may be enough to see off the Rangers and take this objective, but not if the Rangers have another volley of fire like that. That was the best volley of fire we've ever seen come out of Eldar Rangers, and with no assaults, that brings Eldar turn 5 to a close. This battle is still very, very close. Let's see what the Grey Knights can do. Going into Grey Knights, turn 5. End of Grey Knights movement phase, turn 5, and as Castellan Crow is now on his own holding this landing pad facility, he can think of nothing better to do than to chant the praises of the Emperor and try to unleash holy flame to consume the alien. In other words, he is pinning a lot of his hopes on getting a good cleansing flame off and clearing these Eldar out of here. We shall see. Meanwhile, the Storm Raven, it has gone back into zooming mode and it is flying in quickly to offer him fire support, but will it be enough? Who knows? Meanwhile, the Grey Knights are advancing to take revenge upon the Rangers. The Purgation Squad have got a couple of their incinerators in range, and the brother Librarian is advancing over this rocky outcrop past the corpses of his Terminator brothers, and he is not very happy. We could see another cleansing flame being unleashed over this side of the battlefield. Good news for the Grey Knights is the Librarian and his last Terminator are also in a line breaker position. Let's see if the Grey Knight's plans for Cleansing Flame are successful in Grey Knight Psychic Phase, turn 5. End of Grey Knight Psychic Phase, turn 5, and Castellan Garen Crow has been rewarded for his faith in the Emperor. He successfully used 5 dice out of the 10 that the Grey Knights had in their pool to cast Cleansing Flame, which the Spirit Seer failed to deny. The flame swept over the lip of the landing pad and incinerated all of the Iyanden Guardians advancing. This Wraithguard survived, but one Wraithguard in the Spirit Seer squad was taken out. But as the flame subsided, Castellan Crow is standing, filled with the Emperor's holy light. In other words, he perilled and he rolled a 6. He's passed his leadership test. He now has a 3+ invulnerable save and smash and armor bane, and the Emperor protects. Meanwhile, the brother librarian used the Grey Knight's other 5 warp charges to successfully cast Cleansing Flame and has done exactly 6 wounds to the Rangers, wiping them out. That leaves the Grey Knights in possession of the catacombs thanks to the Purgation squad. But with the newly invigorated Garen Crow standing here, he can now charge and actually do some damage with smash. We shall see. This battle has taken a surprising turn near the end. Not so much over at the entrance to the catacombs, but could we see the incredible sight of Castellan Crow fighting off all of these Eldar Wraiths? We shall see, but first we have Grey Knight shooting phase, turn 5. End of Grey Knight shooting phase, turn 5, and the Storm Raven unleashed all of its weaponry upon the Spirit Seer and his squad of Wraithguard, but only one of the Wraithguard fell. They are proving exceedingly impervious to firepower. Meanwhile, Crow fired his Stormbolter at the lone remaining Wraithguard. That is contesting the objective with him, but had no effect as he prepares to charge, filled with the Emperor's holy wrath. And over on the far side, the Purgation squad, they have run down to secure the entrance to the catacombs. They're all in good cover now and holding that objective. And the Librarian and his last Terminator, they have also run. They are intent on achieving Linebreaker and protecting the Librarian from Slay the Warlord. Let's see how Castellan Crow gets on, defending the landing pad single-handedly in Grey Knight's Assault Phase, turn 5. End of Grey Knight's Assault Phase, turn 5, and as it turns out, the Emperor doesn't protect, as Garen Crow raised his blade and charged at the lone Wraithguard. The Wraithguard silently lifted his Wraith Cannon and blasted Castellan Crow to pieces with a 6 followed by another 6. So, the Emperor, it appears, can mislead you. And with the roll of a 6, the game is continuing as we go into Eldar Craftworlds, turn 6. End of Eldar movement phase, turn 6, and it is very difficult for the Eldar. They have been calculating exactly what they need to do in order to achieve a victory points victory, and the first thing they've decided is they need to stop the Storm Raven from being able to get within 3 inches of this objective and therefore contest it, as the Eldar have nothing left with objective secured. So the Wraithguard, that was on his own, he is still holding it from one side, and the Spirit Seer has ordered the rest of his Wraithguard up onto the top of the landing pad, and due to a poor move through cover roll, he is requiring them to get a good run to surround this objective and hedge the Storm Raven out, since he does not think that any of the Eldar units will be able to take out the Grey Knight's aircraft. And the Wraith Lords have other targets anyway. To have any hope of victory, they want to take out the Librarian, who only has 1 wound left, and his Terminator. That will be Slay the Warlord, and it will also prevent the Grey Knights from scoring Linebreaker as well. So, although the Purgation squad could probably hold on to this objective and score Linebreaker, we shall see. Going into Eldar Psychic phase, turn 6, and it looks like the Spirit Seer is just going to concern himself with protecting his Wraithguard holding this objective. End of Eldar Psychic phase, turn 6, and the Spirit Seer has been left disappointed as he failed to get invisibility off on himself and his squad of Wraithguard. So he followed it up with shrouding on himself and his Wraith Guard, but the Grey Knights denied it. So disappointing psychic phase for the Eldar and their sole remaining psyker. Let's see if their shooting phase is more effective. Eldar shooting phase, turn 6. End of Eldar shooting phase, turn 6, and with a roll of a 1, the Spirit Seer realised that his Wraith constructs could not scale the landing pad quickly enough, so the Storm Raven is able to come in and contest this objective. In desperation, the Spirit Seer ordered both Wraith Lords to forget firing up the other end of the battlefield and target the Storm Raven, which jinked, but the Iyanden Wraith Lord did manage a penetrating hit. Unfortunately, that only shook the Grey Knights' aircraft, so it can still move, and that is a disaster for the Eldar. It also brings Eldar turn 6 to a close. Let's see what the Grey Knights do in Grey Knights turn 6. End of Grey Knight's movement phase, turn 6, and the Storm Raven is preparing to make a run on this objective. It has dropped into hover mode and slipped sideways, preparing to move flat out and steal it from the Eldar. That could of course backfire badly on the Grey Knights if the game goes another turn. But the Grey Knights are willing to risk that because they are still in a line breaker position and they still have Slay the Warlord. But the Purgation Squad, they wanted to move back to get into a line breaker position themselves, but they rolled a double 1 on their move through cover, so it is up to the Brother Librarian and his last Terminator. If it goes to turn 7, as well as the Storm Raven probably going down, they will have to survive the firepower of the two Wraith Lords. This game could still go either way, going into Grey Knight's Psychic phase, turn 6. End of Grey Knight's Psychic phase, turn 6, and as the Librarian is a long way away from the action, he could think of nothing better to do than to cast Sanctuary on himself. He decided to only use 3 dice to get it off, and of course a double 6 came up, followed by another 6. He has experienced the same apotheosis that Garen Crow experienced. He now has a 3+ invulnerable save, which of course, because Sanctuary was successful, is increased to a 2+. He has Armour Bane, he has Smash, but after what happened to Castellan Crow, we are not sure that that is not a bit of a curse. Still, the Grey Knights are relatively happy and they are preparing for a very brief shooting phase. Grey Knight shooting phase, turn 6. End of Grey Knight shooting phase, turn 6, and the Storm Raven has hovered in to cast the ominous shadow of its wings over this objective and contest it with the Wraith Guard. Meanwhile, the Purgation Squad have run slightly. Their Justicar is now in a line breaker position and all 3 of them are still holding the objective with no assaults. That brings Grey Knights turn 6 to a close, and let's see, are we going into turn 7? Do you want me to roll it? Okay, it is a 6. We are going into Eldar Craftworlds turn 7. That could be very, very bad news for the Storm Raven. Let's see. End of Eldar movement phase, turn 7, and the Spirit Seer has led his Wraith Guard all up onto the top of the landing pad now. They are all pointing their Wraith Cannon directly at the Storm Raven. It's already lost a whole point, but surely with this amount of D weapon firepower pointing at it, it will go down and the Eldar will, much deservedly, claim this objective. Meanwhile, the other 2 Wraith Constructs, or 2 Wraith Lords, they are advancing upon the Grey Knights that have taken the entrance to the catacombs. They still want to wipe them all out with firepower. It's going to be difficult, but they are going to try their best. If not, maybe they can prevent them from getting line breaker, or maybe they can get Slay the Warlord, or maybe they can knock them off this objective, or maybe, with very effective fire, they can table the Grey Knights. We shall see. Going into Eldar Psychic phase, turn 7. End of Eldar Psychic phase, turn 7, and with only 3 dice available, the Spirit Seer attempted invisibility on himself and his Wraith Guard for lack of anything better to do, but he failed to summon enough power to get it off successfully. Now we proceed to the main event. Eldar shooting phase turn 7. End of Eldar shooting phase turn 7, and the Storm Raven jinked wildly to avoid the incoming firepower, but with 3 Wraith Cannon hits it was torn to pieces, and that leaves the Eldar comfortably in control of this objective. But disappointingly for the Eldar, the Wraith Lords opened fire when the Alaitoc Wraith Lord only managed to take out one of the Purgation squad that had gone to ground. The Iyanden Wraith Lord decided the best thing it could do would be to add its firepower, but it missed with its missile launcher and it failed to wound with its Bright Lance. The 2 remaining Marines from the Purgation squad are holding this objective, and it means that the Eldar now have no way of getting Slay the Warlord or stopping the Grey Knights achieving line breaker. So, as the entire Grey Knights forces are the Brother Librarian, who is wounded, and 1 Terminator, combined with 2 surviving members of the Purgation squad, we are calling the battle here. The Eldar, they, much deservedly, it's got to be said, managed to take this objective. That is worth 3 points. And when they took out a Dreadnought in their first shooting phase, they also managed to achieve first blood. They have 4 points. Meanwhile, the Grey Knights, they managed to wipe out all the Eldar protecting the catacombs and take this objective. That's 3 points. They also managed to take out the Iyanden Farseer. That is worth another point for Slay the Warlord, and critically, it has made all the difference in this game. They have managed to achieve Linebreaker thanks to the Brother Librarian and his last Terminator. But there are only 4 Grey Knights left, and the Eldar still have 2 Wraith Lords and their Spirit Seer and 4 Wraith Guard. Both armies have been shattered by this engagement. The Grey Knights have achieved a marginal victory. They have taken the catacombs, but as the Eldar have taken and will surely destroy their installation, the Grey Knights will have no way of extracting the Spirit Stones, and the Grey Knights are going to have to retreat from this battlefield. There's no way what they have left can take on 2 Wraith Lords unless they call for reinforcements. So they have achieved a marginal victory, but overall, in the grand scheme of things, it is hard to see how they will benefit from it. But this has been an epic game. It has been awesome fun to play. Another very, very close engagement. Both armies came in with a lot of psychic might, and they both performed very well against each other. The Grey Knights have just snatched victory, but the Eldar can feel justly aggrieved. Thanks very much for watching. Please subscribe to our channel, and we will keep producing as many Warhammer 40,000 battle reports as we can. See ya!